it then follows that if you change that relationship to yourself, you can have an impact on that process that the disease represents. And that's what I believe is actually going on. It's a process.
Hi, I'm Dr. Angie Holzer. I specialize in yoga for mental health. And as you listen to Dr. Gabor Mate talk about the importance of loving yourself by setting boundaries, he talks about the possibility of diseases being a manifestation of the process of our life. And if it's a process, we can add things to our life to help in the healing process. When you add something like yoga into your life, we help the body and the mind connect in a way that aids in the healing process. This is especially important when we are learning to set the necessary boundaries in our life and share our healthy emotions. Let's listen to Dr. Mate.
Love is supposed to be a two-way valve. It's supposed to flow in both directions. When it only flows towards others and you ignore your own needs, then you're taking on way too much stress in this life, and it's going to tell on your health. So nothing wrong with loving others. We're meant to do that. But when we're loving others by chronically suppressing our own needs, where we are always afraid of disappointing others, our own needs are compulsively ignored, that's a quick route to disease. 70-80% of autoimmune disease happens to women, which is an incredible proportion. And if you look at something like multiple sclerosis, the gender ratio back in the 30s was about 1-to-1, but now it's more than 3 women for every man. And you can't explain it, as you say, genetically, because genes don't change in the population over 80 years. And so something's going on here. You have to understand the mind-body unity. Like, again, this is one of those well-kept scientific secrets. I mean, scientifically, there's no doubt. In fact, it's beyond doubt that mind and body are inseparable, that the emotional apparatus in the brain and the immune system and the hormonal system and the nervous system are not even separate systems that are connected. They're one unit, different manifestations of the same unit. So let's take something like anger. As an adult, if I were to intrude on your space in a hostile or threatening way, at some point, you'd want to get angry with me. My space, get out. That's healthy anger. So healthy anger is a boundary defense. It just keeps you from being invaded and being intruded upon. We have a circuit in our brain for anger. Anger is not a bad thing. All animals, all mammals have anger circuitry in their brain. Why? Because it helps them defend their territories. You're in my space, get out. It's healthy. In fact, it prevents conflict. Because if I mount a big anger display, we might not come to blows. So anger is a boundary defense, right? So what is the role of the immune system? It's a boundary defense. The immune system keeps out that which is unhealthy and toxic and bacteria and so on, and allows in nutriments and vitamins and healthy bacteria, whatever is good for health. So both the immune system and the emotional system have the same role, you see, to let in what is nurturing and to keep out what is toxic. That's the role of the emotional system. That's the role of the immune system. When something happens emotionally, it's going to have an impact on the immune system as well. So the people that suppress themselves emotionally because they're programmed to do so, not because it's their fault, but because that's how they survived their childhoods. Those people that suppress their emotions, then naturally it's going to have an impact on the immune system, and it does. So the immune system will either fail to protect you, or it'll actually, just like anger that you repress, turns against you in the form of self-loathing and self-criticism and shame. In the same way, the immune system can turn against you, and now you got autoimmune disease. And if you look at it from a cultural point of view, which group in this society is a culture related to take on other people's stresses, to swallow their own needs, not to express them, not to be angry, to take on responsibility for looking after their partners and their families. It's women. That's one of the patriarchal determinations of the female role in this society. Any wonder then that women are much more prone to autoimmune disease. Physicians don't understand any of this. They don't know what I'm talking about. As a profession, I mean, only because they're not taught the science. So my knock on my profession isn't that there's too much science, there's not enough science. There's a huge swath of science that we just don't ignore. that we ignore. Language is very important, how we talk about things. So when we say, I have cancer, or I have ADHD, or I have depression, or I have rheumatoid arthritis, there's an assumption in that way of talking. The assumption is that there's this thing, there's an entity called the disease, then there's another entity, me, and this entity, me, has this other entity. So I have this glass. The glass has got nothing to do with me, it's not part of me, it's not a manifestation of who I am. It's simply an object that I have, I can use it, put it down, give it away, shatter it. That's not going to change me in any way at all. But what if disease is not an entity that has a life of its own? What if disease, like when you go to a doctor and say, you got this disease, here's the prognosis. That assumes that the life is a disease of its own, which is totally independent of your life. It's a thing that you have. It's an entity that somehow entered you, and now you have it. But what if it's not an entity? What if it's a process? What if it's a process that manifests your life? What if it's a process that manifests how you were carried in your mother's womb, what happened to you as a child, what beliefs you developed about yourself? What if it reflects your relationships with the world, with your community, with your family, with your culture? And above all, what if it manifests your relationship to yourself? That it's a process that manifests all these dynamics. It then follows that if you change that relationship to yourself, you can have an impact on that process that the disease represents. And that's what I believe is actually going on. It's a process, it's not a thing, it doesn't have a life of its own necessarily. I'm not saying everything is curable, it's just not that simple, but it is a process, and insofar as you change what goes into that process, you can have significant influence on that process in many, many, many cases. And you can certainly prevent it from coming on by understanding this.
Hi, thanks for listening today. Please subscribe, like, and comment below, which will help us make more videos. Thank you.